Sport Club Corinthians Paulista, commonly known as Corinthians and referred to as a Timão, is a Brazilian multisport club based in Tatuapé, copyright, a bairro in the city of São Paulo. Although they compete in a number of different sports, Corinthians is mostly known for its association football team. It plays in the Paulista Final, the State of São Paulo's Premier State League, as well as the Brasileirão, the top tier of the Brazilian Football League system. The club was founded in 1910 by 5 railway workers from the bairro nobre of Bom Retiro, who became impressed by the performances of London-based Club Corinthian Football Club, electing Miguel Battaglia as the club's first president. Since then, Corinthians became one of Brazil's most successful clubs, having won the Brasileirão on 5 occasions. The Timão also contain in their laurels 3 Copa do Brasil trophies, 1 Supercopa do Brasil, 2 FIFA Club World Cup, 1 Copa Libertadores and 1 Recopa Sudamericana. They have also won the Campeonato Paulista 27 times and the Torneio Rio São Paulo on 5 occasions, being the record holder as the most successful club in those competitions. The club managed to perform a double in 1999, winning both the Paulista Final and the Brasileirão. The Timão played their home games at the Pacaembu, which held up to 40,199 spectators. In 2013, Corinthians moved into their new home of Arena Corinthians, which is a capacity of 68,000. Corinthians' home kit is white shirts, with black shorts, accompanied by white socks. This combination has been used since 1920. Nike are the kit manufacturers. Corinthians holds many long-standing rivalries, most notably against Palmeiras and São Paulo. It has contributed many key and famous players towards Brazil's FIFA World Cup squad such as Gilmar, Rivellino, kʊئրĩtʃhdh, Vila and Ricardinho. The club was the 16th most valuable club in the world in 2013, worth over $358 million. In terms of revenue, Corinthians is also Brazil's richest sports club and the 31st biggest football club in the world, the largest outside of Europe, generating an annual turnover of over $126 million in 2012. Corinthians is also one of the most supported outfits in Brazil. According to a study done by Pluristocos Pesquisas and Licenciamento Esportivo, 14.6% of Brazilians support the Timão. History. In 1910 the football in Brazil was an elitist sport. The top clubs were formed by people who were part of the upper classes. Among them were Club Atlético Paulistano, São Paulo Athletic Club, and Associa Picavolta Atla copyright Tica das Palmeiras. Lower-class society excluded from larger clubs founded their own minnow clubs and only played floodplain football. Bucking the trend, a group of 5 workers of the São Paulo Railway, more precisely Joaquim Ambrose and Antony Pereira, Rafael Perón, Anselmo Correa and Carlos Silva, residents of the neighborhood of Bom Retiro. It was August 31, 1910 when these workers were watching a match featuring a London-based club touring Brazil, Corinthians FC. After the match, while the group returned home, the men spoke of partnerships, business ideas, and general dreams of grandeur. In the mind of each one surfaced a great idea, the foundation of a club. After several exchanges in a lively argument, a common ground led those athletes the same dream. The arguments led to the conclusion that they would meet the next day to make a dream into reality. September 1, 1910. In anticipation of heavy rains, the group agreed to meet after sundown in public sight. That night at 8:30 p.m., on Rua José copyright Paulino, underneath the glow of an oil lamp the 5 workers reunited alongside their guest and neighbors from Bom Retiro. That night the club was founded, alongside its board of directors, who elected Miguel Battaglia as the first club president. Corinthians played their first match on September 10, 1910, away against União da Lapa, a respected amateur club in São Paulo. And despite being defeated by 1-0, this match would mark the beginning of a successful era as an amateur club. On September 14, Luis Fabi scored Corinthians' first goal against La Pola, another amateur club in the city, and Corinthians won their first game 2-0. With good results and an increasing number of supporters, Corinthians joined the Liga Paulista, after winning 2 qualifying games, and played in the São Paulo State Championship for the first time, in 1913. Just 1 year after joining the league, Corinthians was crowned champion for the first time, and were again 2 years later. There were many fly-by-night teams popping up in São Paulo at the time, and during the first practice held by Corinthians a banner was placed by the side of the field stating "This one will last." The year of 1922, the centennial of Brazilian independence, marks the start of Corinthians' hegemony in the São Paulo State Championship. As football was almost exclusively played at Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo by that time, the 2 state champions were considered to be the 2 top clubs in Brazil. After defeating the Rio de Janeiro State Championship champion of that year, Arma copyright Rica, Corinthians joined the company of the great teams in Brazil. The same year also marked the first of 3 state championships in a row, something that happened again in 1928, Euro 1930 and 1937, Euro 1939. Corinthians seemed destined to win state championships in threes. After 6 years without being a champions, they came on 3 more from 1937 to 1939. The 1940s were a more difficult time, and the club would win a championship in 1941 and would only win their next in 1951. At the beginning of the 1950s, Corinthians made history in the São Paulo Championship. In 1951, the team composed of Carbone, Claudio, Luisino, Baltazar and Mario scored 103 goals in 30 matches of the São Paulo Championship, registering an average of 3.43 per game. Carbone was the top goal scorer of the competition with 30 goals. The club would also win the São Paulo Championships of 1952 and 1954. In this same decade, Corinthians were champions 3 times of the Rio São Paulo Championship, the tournament that was becoming most important in the country with the increased participation of the greatest clubs from the 2 most important footballing states in the country. In 1953, in a championship in Venezuela, Corinthians won the Small Cup of the World, a championship that many consider as a precursor of the Worldwide Championship of Clubs. On the occasion, Corinthians, substituting for Vasco da Gama, went to Caracas, the Venezuelan capital, and recorded 6 consecutive victories against Roma, Barcelona and Selection of Caracas. The club would also win the Cup of the Centenary of São Paulo, in the same year. After the triumphs in the São Paulo Championship and the Rio São Paulo of 1954, Corinthians had a lengthy title drought. The breakthrough finally came when they won the São Paulo State Championship in 1977, breaking a string of 23 years without a major title. Under the leadership of Czar Cubed Crates, Vladimir and Casagrande, Corinthians were the first Brazilian club in which players decided about concentrate or pawઃṭĩ, a common Brazilian practice where the football players were locked up in a hotel days before a game, and discussed politics. In 1982, before the election of government of São Paulo State, the team wore a kit with the words, DIA 15 vote, trying to motivate the biggest number of fans to vote. In 1990, Corinthians won their first Campeonato Brasileiro São copyright Rio, beating their rivals, São Paulo, in the final at the opponent's own stadium, Estádio do Morumbi. In the following year, Corinthians beat Flamengo and won the Supercopa do Brasil. In the 1995, the club won the Copa do Brasil for the first time, beating Grêmio in the final at the Estádio Olímpico Monumental in Porto Alegre. In the same decade, the club won the state championship in 1995, 1997 and 1999, and won the national championship again in 1998 and in 1999. In 2000, Corinthians won the first edition of the FIFA Club World Cup, beating Vasco in the final played at the Estádio do Maracanã. To reach the final, Corinthians finished ahead of Real Madrid of Spain, Al Nassr of Saudi Arabia and Raja Casablanca of Morocco. In the same decade, the club won the state championship in 2001 and in 2003 and the Copa do Brasil in 2002, beating Brazilians in the final. Between 1990 and 2005, the club also won the Ramacuben de Carranza Trophy in 1996, the Rio São Paulo tournament in 2002, the São Paulo Youth Cup in 1995, 1999, 2004, and 2005, and the Dallas Cup in 1999 and 2000. The club's situation in early 2004 was among the most difficult in their history. Bad administration, lack of money and terrible campaigns both in the 2003 Brazilian Championship and in the 2004 São Paulo State Championship caused their millions of supporters to worry. Fortunately, some young players and a new manager helped the team to improve from their terrible start. At the end of the championship, Corinthians finished in 5th place and gained entry to the Copa Sudamericana. This situation was one of the factors which enabled Corinthians president, Alberto de Lib, to convince the club's advisors to sign a controversial deal with an international fund of investors called Media Sports Investment. The deal granted the company a large degree of control over the club for 10 years in exchange for large financial investments in return. This has brought many quality players to the team, such as Carlos Tevez, Roger, Javier Mascherano and Carlos Alberto. Despite the MSI investments, Corinthians experienced a slow start in the 2005 state championship, but managed to improve as it progressed, eventually managing to finish second. Their start to the Brazilian Championship during 2005 was difficult too, but after Daniel Passarella's dismissal, the club finished the championship round well, and were eventually crowned Brazilian champions for the 4th time, after a controversial annulment of 11 games due to a betting scandal. The relationship between Corinthians managers and the MSI president, Kia Joorabchian, was not good, and after being eliminated in the Copa Libertadores, the club experienced a crisis which was responsible for the bad performances for the rest of 2006. Eventually, the partnership came to an end. On December 2, 2007, following a 1-1 draw away to Grêmio, Corinthians were relegated to the 2nd division. Corinthians, who won promotion to the top division of Brazilian football for 2009 by winning the Série B tournament, signed with 3-time FIFA Player of the Year Ronaldo. In 2009, led by Ronaldo, Corinthians won their 26th Campeonato Paulista and their 3rd Copa do Brasil. Confirming the club's good moment, Corinthians finished the Campeonato Brasileiro 2010 in 3rd place, granting their place on the subsequent Copa Libertadores. After being eliminated from the South American tournament by the relatively less traditional Deportes Tolima, though, Corinthians saw Ronaldo retire from football. To replace him, the club signed with other 2006 national squad veteran Adriano. In 2011, Corinthians won their 5th national title. On July 4, after reaching the final of the 2012 Copa Libertadores undefeated, Corinthians won its first title after a 2-match final against 6-time champions Boca Juniors by drawing 1-1 in Argentina and accomplishing an inaugural victory at the Estadio do Pacaembu in São Paulo, winning 2-0, becoming the 9th Brazilian side to win the Copa Libertadores. After this historical title, Corinthians is considered the most valuable club in Brazil. The club won the 2012 FIFA Club World Cup for the 2nd time after defeating English club Chelsea 1-0 on December 16, 2012. Kit, colors. The Corinthians shirt had no crest before 1913, when the club joined the Liga Paulista. Even though the club has been recognized by the colors black and white for most of their history, the first Corinthians kit originally consisted of cream shirts and black shorts. But when the shirts were washed, the cream color gradually became white. After that, early in the club's history, the official colors were changed, so the club would not waste much money on buying new kits. In 1954 the black with thin white stripes uniform was introduced, and became the alternative uniform. The original cream color of the first uniform would come back as a reference in 2007, with the golden third uniform. The purple has been associated as a fan color for a long time and, since 2008, has been used as a successful third uniform. In popular culture, a Corintiano Roxo is a fanatic supporter of Corinthians. Crests. Unlike the shirt, the shield of Corinthians went through several changes over the years. While the Corinthians disputed only friendlies and futebol de várzea. The first crest was hastily created for a game against Minas Gerais. It was valid for qualifying for the 1913 Liga Paulista de Football, and was simply composed of the letters C and P laced together. The third shield would be used until the following year, when Hermogenes Barboui, lithographer and brother of the player Amilcar, created the first official shield, developing a framework for the letters and added the S, which premiered at the friendly against Torino, in São Paulo. Shortly thereafter, the frame gets larger, and from 1919 the distinctive beginning to form the current format, which includes the flag of São Paulo in the center. In 1937, Getúlio Vargas lowered the status of the new state and made a public ceremony with the burning of flags of all states in the federation, in order to symbolize his desire to strengthen the centralized government. Yet, the flag of São Paulo survived inside the shell of the Corinthians. After the fall of the regime, the freedom to use of regional symbols was once again permitted. In 1939, the shield has one a string around the circle, and the two oars and anchor, in allusion to the club's success in nautical sports. The design was created by a modernist painter Francisco Rebelo, who played for Corinthians' reserve squad in the 1920s. Thereafter, the symbol Corinthian passed through small changes over time, specifically the flag and the frame. In 1990, the first star was added in reference to the first Brazilian title. The same was done with the achievements of 1998, 1999 and 2005, and a larger yellow star above the others, in honor of winning the FIFA World Cup 2000. Before 2011, the Corinthians board decided to remove all the stars. Manufacturer and sponsors. Corinthians began the 2012 season with Johnson & Johnson Brazilian consumer brand Jontex as its main sponsor. When Corinthians initiated the 2012 Libertadores campaign a month later, Fiat subsidiary Iveco became the main sponsor alongside Fisk, Marabras, and Bombril. Prior to the Libertadores final, Iveco approached Corinthians in an attempt to become the exclusive sponsor of tʃimäpɔʁtʃi. Corinthians rebuffed, stating that such a deal would be out of Iveco's financial reach. The latest prices for Corinthians shirt sponsorships are as follows: are $30 million, sleeves are $15 million, shoulders are $8 million, for a total of $53 million. On July 7, 2012, it was announced that Corinthians is close to signing an exclusive sponsorship deal lasting until the end of 2012. Worth of $68 million. This would place Corinthians as the second most expensive shirt in the world, ahead of Juventus and behind Manchester United. Facilities: Stadium. Former stadia: Campo do Linheiro and Estadio do Bom Retiro. The first field of the Corinthians was in the neighborhood of Bom Retiro, where the club was founded in 1910. More precisely in the old Street of Immigrants, current Rua José copyright Paulino. It was actually a stadium, but a vacant lot owned by a seller of firewood. It was nicknamed Field Linheiro. It was the time of the floodplain and the players themselves had to clean and flatten the lawn. Ponte Grande. In January 1918, Corinthians opened its first stadium, in Great Bridge, on the banks of Tietê River. The land was leased from the municipality under the influence of the intellectual Antonio de Alcântara Machado, one of the first to approach the club workers. Stood beside the Campo Forest, A.A. Palmeiras, and was built by the players and fans in a community helping system. The Corinthians played their games there until 1927. He played 138 games with 83 wins, 43 draws and 12 defeats. Parque São Paulo. In 1926, the club purchased Parque São Paulo, located within the Tatuapé copyright. The Parque São Paulo belonged to Sports Club Sirius, a rival in the disputes of the football season. After purchase, Then President Ernesto Corinthians Cosano decided to reform the stage, with financial support from the members. While the reforms were carried out, followed the Corinthians sending their matches in the area of Great Bridge. Once stopped reforms in the Parque São Paulo, in 1928, the field of Great Bridge was donated to the St. Benedict. The renovated Parque São Paulo, still without floodlights, was inaugurated on July 22, in a friendly game against Arma copyright Recopa J. The land purchased with the original included a cereal farm, hence the nickname Fazendinha, still used today. It was from here that the Corinthians began to develop and could build up its headquarters. In Estadio Alfredo Schwann Rig, the official name of Fazendinha, the club only played in 468 deals, with 346 wins, 60 draws and 62 defeats. 12 goals were scored by Timão and 480 conceded. The last game played there was a friendly against Brazilians on August 3, 2002. Currently, the Parque São Paulo is used for training and games of smaller categories. The board has the idea of reforming it, but the plans never leave paper. Pacaembu, with the growing number of fans, Corinthians began operating in major stadiums. In particular, the club has established a relationship with Paulo Machado de Carvalho Stadium, which belongs to the municipality of São Paulo and is best known as Pacaembu Stadium. Some 50,000 fans attended the inauguration of the stadium on April 28, 1940. The primary pitted Palestra Italia and Coritiba. Then, the game between Corinthians background, then current three-time champion São Paulo, and Atlético Mineiro, Corinthians won by 4-2. The Pacaembu was opened as the largest stadium in Latin America, with capacity for 70,000 people. In 1942, little more than 70,000 people came to the stadium to watch the match between Corinthians and São Paulo, in particular by the attacker Leonidas da Silva, Idol Pauline, and are considered the best Brazilian player in his time. The game ended tied at 3-3 and the public was never beaten that game at the stadium. Currently, the Pacaembu has capacity for up to 40,000 spectators. As the capacity of Pacaembu decreased with time, to 37,000 spectators as of its last improvement in 2008, Corinthians have been forced to play sometimes in rival São Paulo FC's ground, when the expected attendance is greater than Pacaembu's capacity. Former partner Group HTMF bought land in the Recopa Sudamericana highway in late 1990s for the stadium construction, but the partnership ended soon after that. Arena Corinthians. In late 2006 an NGO called Cooperfield established a fund drive for a new stadium. The NGO's stated goal is to raise $300 million within a 36-month timeframe for the construction of a 60,000-seat venue that would be ceded to the club under an undetermined arrangement. The project finally failed and money earned was given to Corinthians. As of 2009, there are some conjectures that the government of São Paulo might make a deal for a 30-year allotment of Pacaembu. Besides that, Fazendinha is being improved to host some matches and shows starting in 2010. In August 2010 the president of CBF, Ricardo Teixeira, along with Governor of São Paulo State, Alberto Goldman, and the Mayor of São Paulo, Gilberto Kassab announced that the opening ceremony of the World Cup of Brazil will be held in the new Corinthians Stadium to be built in the district of Itaquera, in the eastern part of São Paulo city. Of the $820 million in the budget, $400 million will be financed through a loan from BNDES to be paid by the Corinthians in conjunction with the construction, the Odebrecht Group, while the remaining of $420 million will be paid by development incentive certificates issued by the city of São Paulo. The issuance of certificates of development incentive for the construction of the stadium corresponds to an ordinance to encourage development that is applied to any investment in the east zone of São Paulo and does not consist of money that the government will pay directly, but indirectly through tax money it will receive. Training facility Court Joachim Grava, Hotel. There are 32 bedrooms in Hotel CT Joachim Grava. 2 players per room during pre-season, 1 to a room while in season. The auditorium in the hotel allows for lectures and team meetings. The hotel restaurant seats 60. The hotel is complete with physiotherapy and massage rooms. Offices for the president and the board of directors, offices for hotel administration, a locker room for the visiting team, games rooms, an internet cafe, copyright and a reading room. Annex, Office of Technology and Statistics. Office of the Logistics Supervisor. A large shared multi-purpose office for security, communications and TV Corinthians, and administrative meeting room, Laboratorio Cubed Rio Corinthians A9, an in-house biomechanics complex for the main purpose of injury prevention. Machines measure the contact force and velocity of the joints in running, jumping and kicking. Also measured, the force and reaction timing of players during acceleration and deceleration, as well as analysis of how their effort may adversely affect their joints and muscles. CE-PRU, or Centro de Preparo picavolt-pound-o e Rebelia picavolt-pound-o Osmo da Oliveira. Gym, physical therapy rooms, heated pools and locker rooms. Press room, seats over 100 media officials, team chapel, for individual prayer, external space, mini gym, courts with approval of FIBA and FIVB for official games, outdoor pool, bar-back, and a tennis court. Club culture, supporters, feel. The Corinthians fans is fondly called faithful. One of the most memorable moments was favored by its fans in 1976, in that year's championship semi-final, when more than 70,000 Corinthians fans traveled from São Paulo to Rio de Janeiro to watch the match against Fluminense at Maracanã Stadium. The event was recorded in history as the Corinthian invasion. This was also the largest audience recorded in a match involving the Alvinegro at Brazil's then largest stadium. The largest crowd of the Morumbi Stadium was recorded at in October 13, 1977, where just over 146,000 people attended a game between Corinthians and Ponte Preta, the second match of that year's championships finals. Corinthians also holds the largest crowd for that year championship. In Pacaembu, Corinthians holds 9 out of 10 largest audiences in the stadium's history. The record attendance at Pacaembu was at a game between Corinthians and São Paulo in 1942, which had more than 70,000 spectators. Bando do Lucas, one of the nicknames of the Corinthians crowd. According to a number of research institutes, as IBOP and Datafolha, besides Score magazine, Corinthians holds the second largest crowd in Brazil with about 25 million fans around the country, behind only of Flamengo from Rio de Janeiro. Nearly 15 million of these supporters are concentrated in São Paulo, where the team of the Parque São Paulo outnumber São Paulo and Palmeiras fans added, 2 of their biggest rivals. Another 10 million faithful are scattered throughout the rest of Brazil. In Minas Gerais, the team of Paulo has more than 1 million fans and is the 4th largest crowd in this state, only behind locals Cruzeiro and ʻklubi, and again Rio's Flamengo. In the south of the country, Corinthians are only behind Grêmio and International. Paraná is the only state in which Corinthians is the most popular team outside of São Paulo, where 1.8 million Alvinegros outnumber ʻklubi Paranaense and Coritiba fans. Outside the south/southeast regions, Corinthians is consolidated as the second most popular team in the country. At Centro-Oeste, Norte, and Nordeste regions, they also have the second largest fan base. Corinthians have a strong presence of supporters in states like Pernambuco. According to research IBOP/2010 are almost 700,000 fans, behind only the 2 main local teams, Sport and Náutico. Corinthians are Euro unregistered trademark fans are famous for being passionate about the team and loyal supporters. In April 2009, the club released a tribute documentary to their fans. Named Feel. The documentary highlights the fans' support in one of the most difficult moments in the team Euro unregistered trademark's history, when it was demoted to the national second division in 2007. Directed by Andrea Pasquini and written by Serginho Groisman and Marcelo Rubens Paiva, The documentary shows several fans and players unregistered trademark testimonials. In 2009, another documentary about the fans' love for the team was released. Directed by D. Moriti, 23 anos M7 segundos o filme do jejum Corinthiano, which portrays the historical moment when, in 1977, Corinthians won the Campeonato Paulista, after 23 years without winning any championships. Torcidas Organizadas, the club is acknowledged for the biggest and most influential torcidas organizadas in Brazil. Gavia Micrones da Fiel, motto Lealdade, Humildade e Procedimento. Gavia Micrones da Fiel was founded on July 1, 1969, but its ideology began to be thought of before. In 1965, young Corinthians fans gathered in the stands in order to question the political and administrative life of the Corinthians. The members gathered in different locations, members' homes, workplaces, and public squares. This group was distinguished by a passion for the club and have characteristics idealizing and fulfilling. The foundation of Gavia Micrones, on July 1, 1969, came during a bleak time for Brazilians, amidst the military dictatorship. At a time when freedom of expression was virtually non-existent, these young fans began to attempt to recover political and administrative control of Corinthians. The Corinthians were under the administration of Wadihelu, who for years tried to prevent the creation of the Gavia Micrones through several reprisals. This persecution was not enough to make them give up, and gradually his ideas were maturing. I had decided that the name of the club should contain faithful, as well as the fans were already known to the Corinthians, that even after 15 years without winning a single title, crowds took to the stage. What was simply an utopia of young lovers and revolutionary thoughts turned into reality. Gavia Micrones da Fiel was born. However, the persecution of the managers of the Corinthians is not over. There were many attempts to escape the ideas of these young people. However, in 1972, Wadihelu lost the election to Miguel Martinez, who took command of the Corinthians. The Hawks of the Faithful attempted unprecedented act in its history. The overthrow of a military dictator took precedence over the tʃiʻmŊ. Miguel Martinez, even though it was supported by the Hawks of the Faithful, tried to influence its founders, so that they would not pressure the new administration of the club and not put into practice some of their politically revolutionary ideas. In July 1971, the Gavia Micrones underwent its first political crisis, as one of the founders accepted the proposal of the Corinthians to leave Gaviões da Fiel and create a more moderate/non-politicized torcida. Like everything that involves the Corinthians and passion of its fans, the Hawks of the Faithful loomed up and multiplied, rapidly assuming the position of the largest organized supporters of Brazil. The attitude of these young people began to increasingly disturbing the dictatorship, especially when the Hawks of the Faithful had spoken publicly against the military dictatorship, displaying a banner in a match at Morumbi asking for a Euro e Anistia Ampla, Geral e Restrita Euro. This protest led to the conviction of then Gavia Micrones president, being the first public entity to openly manifest itself against the regime. Currently, the torcida has 97,177 members, the largest organized torcida in Brazil. Camisa 12, motto O Jogador das Arquibancadas. Camisa 12 was founded in August 1971, the non-politicized offshoot of Gavia Micrones da Fiel. The greatest moment for the torcida came in 1976, during Invarsão Corinthiana, in a memorable semi-final against Fluminense. Camisa 12 actively participated. When over 70,000 Corinthians fans from São Paulo made the 280-mile trip to Rio de Janeiro's Maracanã Stadium with scores of flags, banners, and percussion ensembles. The attendance for that match was 147,000 plus. Over 15,000 members, Pavila Pondo Nove, motto Preso por uma cubed Paxa Pondo. It was founded on September 9, 1990 by 9 tʃiʻmŊ fans in honor of the team football Carandiru House of Detention. The symbol adopted was from the Disney cartoon DuckTales of its antagonists the Beagle Boys. The torcida grew out of a social program carried out in Carandiru Penitentiary, once the largest prison in Latin America and site of the Carandiru massacre. where a group of friends, young fans of Corinthians, formed a team in promoting a charity football match against a team of Carandiru detainees, mainly composed of Corinthians supporters, all from the 9th Pavilion of the institution, hence its name. This group, through raffles, promotions and sports culture contributions, began to raise funds for the making banners and flags to divulge its philosophy on games in the stadiums of the Corinthians. The idea of creating an organized torcida was to mature on September 9, 1990 officially became a Corinthians organized torcida, christened the Pavilion 9. Over 12,000 members. Estopim feel, motto ra section AE attitude, Estopim feel, founded on January 5, 1979 finds its roots in the 1976 Invasão Corinthiana. A group of fans from the Diadema neighborhood of São Paulo participated in the invasion of Maracanã Stadium, celebrated in the stand with a flag and a banner that read, Estopim feel, and Corinthianos do Diadema. Feel macabre, motto Manifanatica do Interior, Feel macabre, founded on October 4, 1993 in Bairro, SP. This torcida was founded by a group of friends that regularly met in Bairro cafeteria. After its initial 3 years, it opened an official headquarters in Bairro, with 5 other offices following soon at the interior of São Paulo. With about 1,800 members, it is the team's largest ultras in the interior of São Paulo. Coringa motto Torcida Beba pelo Corinthians, Coringa founded on October 14, 1989. This torcida's origins begin in the 1980s on a Greater São Paulo courtyard. The local was frequented by a group of friends who met casually to play street football and drink beers together after Corinthians games. In 1989, these friends decided frequent Corinthians matches as a unit. They began by going in separate cars. That year their group of friends grew, all them from Greater São Paulo, mainly the ABC region, and their courtyard became a meeting point for the masses of new friends. That same year, the owner of the courtyard known as Dinu was discussing the sheer volume of Corinthians fans that considered his courtyard as a pre-match meeting point. It was that moment when Dinu and friends realized that they had the numbers to create an organized torcida. The members of the newly created torcida reached a simple agreement on what to name themselves. They agreed that they both had a passion for Corinthians and chop. After years of growth in membership, respect, and acceptance, the torcida moved out of the courtyard and set up a headquarters in Diadema. Over 6,000 members, regional local, many of the torcidas above have subseeds established by fans living outside of São Paulo. Gaviões in particular has 10, 8 in-state, 1 out-of-state Brasilia, and 1 international Japan. Camisa 12 with 8, 6 in-state, 2 out-of-state Minas Gerais and Espírito Santo. Pavilhão Novo with 10, 9 in-state, 1 out-of-state Mato Grosso do Sul. Estopim feel with 10, 8 in-state, 2 out-of-state Paraná and Minas Gerais. Feel macabre with 6, 5 in-state, 1 out-of-state Rio Grande do Sul. Coringa chop with 5, all in-state. Rivalries. Derby Paulista is a crosstown fixture between Corinthians and Palmeiras, consistently cited as one of the greatest rivalries worldwide by FIFA, CNN, the Daily Mail, and others. Palmeiras was founded by a group of Italians who were formerly members of Corinthians. Since 1914, when that treasonous act was taken upon these former supporters, a deep-seated hatred was born. The derby atmosphere is fierce on and off the pitch, as violence is a norm between the clubs. Clássico Majestoso is a crosstown fixture between Corinthians and São Paulo. The derby dates back to 1935, at the final refounding São Paulo after being thrice defunct. Corinthians possesses the largest amount of supporters in the state, whereas São Paulo's lies in second place. The Clássico's most memorable match for Corinthians is the 1990 Campeonato Brasileiro finals, which led to Corinthians' first national title. Clássico Alvinegro is a regional fixture between Corinthians and Santos. Alvinegro is given after the colors worn by both teams, black and white. The Clásico reached one of its highest stages for Corinthians supporters when Corinthians met Santos in the semi-finals of Libertadores 2012. Corinthians won 2-1 on aggregates. Other rivalries: Derby dos Invictos, Corinthians and Portuguese is crosstown rivalry. Corinthians vs Ponte Preta is an in-state rivalry that peaked in the 1977 Campeonato Paulista final, which led to Ponte Preta's greatest Paulista finish. Clásico das Multimicrones is an interstate rivalry pegging the two most supported teams in Brazil, Corinthians and Flamengo. Corinthians and Vasco led to great matchups in some rivalry recently, mostly after Vasco winning the Brasileirão in 1997 and 2000, and Corinthians in 1998 and 1999. Their greatest match coincided with the first FIFA Club World Cup in 2000, with a Corinthians victory in the penalty shootout. Corinthians also won the 2011 Brasileirão in the last round of the season, 2 points over the runner-ups Vasco. Corinthians saved Vasco from their usual runner-up fate by defeating the Cariocas in 2012 Libertadores quarter-finals. Symbols. Musketeer. Corinthians' official mascot is the musketeer, a symbol of bravery, audacity and fighting spirit. The adoption of that character recalls the first years of the club. In 1913 most of the leading football clubs in São Paulo state founded the APEA. The depleted Paulista League was left with only Americano, Germania and Internacional, known as the Three Musketeers of São Paulo football. Corinthians joined the three as D'Artagnan, being the fourth and most adored musketeer, just like in Alexandre Dumas, Paris' novel The Three Musketeers. To be accepted in that musketeers universe, Corinthians had to show their bravery. As there was many other teams who coveted the spot in the Liga Paulista, Corinthians participated in a selective tournament against Minas Gerais and São Paulo, two other great teams of Paulista amateur football at that time. The Corinthian team beat Minas 1-0 and São Paulo 4-0, earning acceptance into the group and acquiring the right to participate in the special division of the Paulista League in the following year. St. George, an important symbol for Corinthians is St. George/Ogum. St. George is one of the most revered Catholic saints in Brazil, a nation with a blend of cultures. The collusion between African and European cultures is seen in Brazil's definition of São Paulo as a mash between Catholicism and Western African mythology. The comparison may be drawn the entities' similar characteristics. St. George, the soldier who protects those who pray to him. Ogum, god of war who serves the communities who believe in him. It is this warrior demeanor that made Corinthians fans indebted to São Paulo. Corinthians began as a small team for the lower classes of São Paulo, even though they obtained initial success. Lack of respect for the working class forced Corinthians to leave their São Paulo State Football League in protest. After multiple championships, Timão made its largest leap in prestige in the founding of a Corinthians headquarters, 1926. The creation of said headquarters became the first fusion of Timão and São Paulo. The land purchased for the headquarters was formerly Parque São Paulo at 777 Rua São Paulo, Tatuapé. Copyright, São Paulo, SP. Corinthians' support for São Paulo became fanatical during the decade of the 60s. Between 1954 and 1977, Corinthians failed to add to its gallery of conquests and the Corinthian nation lived the hardest moments of its history. While the stream struggled in the 60s, fans recanted that they were blessed by a Santo Guerreiro. In the early 60s the lack of success lingered in the minds of fans and gave birth to a utilization of the blessings of São Paulo. This caused Corinthians to erect a chapel in honor of the saint, in order to strengthen the club's resolve via mysticism. 1969, after the death of two players Lido and Eduardo, the funeral was held in Capela São Paulo, and strengthened the club's identity at a time when championships were non-existent. 1974 Paulista Final, after a heart-wrenching loss to arch-rival Palmeiras, composer Paulino Nogueira recorded O Corinthians, a song that had popular commercial success at the time. In the verses of the composition dedicated to the suffering Corinthians could not miss the quote to the patron St. George. O, zar pound o 20 anos de espera. Mas mu zar pound o jorge me da fo resection as, para podermos die in fim, descontamu sofrimento em como de mim. Oh, it's been 20 years of waiting, but my St. George gives me strength to be able to one day finally cashing in my suffering upon those who laughed at me. Corinthians' 2011 third kit was burgundy-colored and featured zar pound o jorge slaughtering a dragon in a dark watermark across the right side of the chest. The utilization of zar pound o jorge's image on the shirt is the practice of zar pound o jorge's prayer. Anthem. Salvo Corinthians, Hail Corinthians, O Campia pound o dos Campia Micrones, the champion of champions, eternamente dentro dos nossos corações Micrones, eternally in our hearts, Salvo Corinthians de tradia picavolt Micrones e ʻklubi reals mil, hail the Corinthians of thousands of traditions and glories, to a copyright isʼpɔʁtʃi, you are the pride. Dos esportistas do Brasil. Of the athletes of Brazil, tu passado a copyright uma bandeira, your past is a banner, tu present, uma linha picavolt poundo, your present is a lesson, figuras entre os primeiros, figures within the elite, do na sua esporte brita poundo. Of our British sport, Corinthians grand, great Corinthians, sempre altaneiro, always the highest, a permiles do Brasil, it's Brazil's. O clube mais brasileiro. Most Brazilian club, Salvo Corinthians, Hail Corinthians, O Campia pound o dos Campia Micrones, the champion of champions, eternamente dentro dos nossos corações Micrones, eternally in our hearts, Salvo Corinthians de tradia picavolt Micrones e ʻklubi reals mil, hail the Corinthians of thousands of traditions and glories, to a copyright isʼ pɔʁtʃi, you are the pride. Dos esportistas do Brasil. Of the athletes of Brazil, players, first team squad, as of July 26, 2014, note, flags indicate national team as defined under FIFA eligibility rules. Players may hold more than one non-FIFA nationality. Youth and reserve squad, note, flags indicate national team as defined under FIFA eligibility rules. Players may hold more than one non-FIFA nationality. Out on loan, note, flags indicate national team as defined under FIFA eligibility rules. Players may hold more than one non-FIFA nationality. Notable players. There are many players who reside in the hearts and minds Corinthians fans. Popular consensus amongst the field supporting throngs of household names such as Branda Poundo, Christian, Dentino, Dinho, Ida Rio, Tupa Poundzinu, and many, many more. Corinthians fans are known to fanatically support their team, regardless of performance. Furthermore, the field are known to make idols of players who could hardly considered as cracks, or footballing elite, based on bravery, courage, and attitude. Yet, in order to create a concise list we must create list criteria based on statistics and individual honors. List criteria: player has made more than 500 appearances for the club, or player has scored over 200 goals, or player has won Bola de Ouro, or Bola de Prata, or player has finished in top 3 of South American Footballer of the Year, or player is on World Soccer's the greatest players of the 20th century and played a minimum of 50 matches. Technical staff, current technical staff, last updated May 31, 2011. Presidents. Notable managers. List criteria: manager has directed over 100 matches for the club, or manager has won consecutive Campeonato Paulistas, or manager has won a Copa do Brasil, or Campeonato Brasileiro are copyright Rio, or Copa Libertadores, or FIFA Club World Cup. Statistics, recent seasons. Legend, club honors. A denotes undefeated championship, other titles, Copa do Atlas Centenario, winners 1956, Small World Cup, winners 1953, Rama Cube de Carranza Trophy, winners 1996, A near the year denotes the club won the competition without losses, see also. Corinthians basketball team, list of football clubs in non-Anglophone countries with English names, references. External links, official website, Acervo SCCP All matches and history of Corinthians, Committee for Preservation of Corinthians Memories, FIFA homepage, book Top 10 Idols.